Hey YouTube fans, this is Agent 6415. Just bringing you another video update of my current setup and system. There have been a few changes since my last video, being about 5-6 months ago. Sorry about that. There's actually been a few things that, if you noticed in the description, my system has changed. So kind of go over those for you and kind of give you a rundown, just to kind of show you what's going on with the Agent 6415 build. And if you're like me, I always love to check out other people's builds just to see what they've got going on, and that way I can kind of compare and see what they do and build something that I like for myself. Since the last video, I had built my AMD FX 8350 for the purpose mostly of video editing, and I did do some other things on the system, and I showed that to you guys. I have since then moved my video editing system to my office, which has actually worked out quite well for me, and I know for some people they like to do the working from home, which has its pros, but it also has its cons. So I decided to go ahead and do that, and I swapped it for the computer that we use in the office for live streaming and for doing some minor stuff with web, and pretty much do all my video editing there, as well as use it for this live streaming in its place. So I was able to bring the other system home and kind of take what I wanted from it and use it. So I'm going to show that to you guys, and in some ways it is a downgrade as far as CPU, memory, and motherboard go, but it is an upgrade with a video card. So I think mostly now this computer is my entertainment rig, and whatever little games I do play, and for music, movies, for browsing web, and also doing some other things just for fun. It is definitely a great little thing that I use every now and again. So I'll show it to you guys. And also, lastly, I made my first case modification to the system, so I'm going to show that to you guys right now. So here's the side panel case. You can see right away, if you're familiar with the NZXT Phenom case, it is a pretty cool modification, if I say so myself. Definitely my first major case modification. I've done some other minor case modifications, but this was my first major one. I really tried hard to find videos on YouTube for this, and sometimes they just weren't titled very well. I did find a few, so those of you that are interested in doing a case mod, sometimes I think it'd probably be more worth it just to pay a little extra money and get a nice case, you know, just for the mod you're looking for. But some people love to do that. Some people like to tinker and toy, which that's some of the fun. So there was, for if you've ever seen any other videos I've done, in here there was actually a section. It's actually kind of outlined just like that, and then it was a big area you could put a 240mm fan if you wanted to, but it had no fan at the moment when it came packaged, so it was just pretty much a major big vent. And in one way I wanted to be able to close off that area from being open, to having airflow through it, to kind of give a little bit more of a closed system. So having the fans come in from the back through the CPU, and two going in from the side here, also one coming in from the front here, and everything exhausting out the top, since heat rises anyways. It seems to do a pretty good natural airflow, and I think it does help keep the components a little bit cooler, instead of having that open grate that air can just pass through freely, and not quite such a closed system. But very cool. I will say that anyone looking to do this, the two ways that I saw to cut the metal, because this is a steel side panel, not too thick, but probably a millimeter or and a half. I used a jigsaw. I did have a Dremel tool, but Dremel tools just don't cut straight. So I used a jigsaw borrowed from a friend, and it did cut much better, although my imperfections were very visible, and I tried to sand them down the best I could. But what I did end up doing is buying some U-channel, which I found from a website, and if you guys want that, I'll link that for you. And it wasn't very expensive, and I bought that from a PC modifying website. They do a lot of that stuff. And I put that around the edges to kind of hide a lot of the imperfections, although you can still see a few if you look real closely at the waves. But overall, it wasn't very expensive. I cut the piece out and then simply just went to Lowe's, got myself some of the probably a little bit better quality plexiglass. They have like 3 different grades, and I kind of got the middle one. But I don't expect people to be bouncing basketballs and throwing them at my computer case, breaking the window. So I didn't need the toughest one there. At least I hope not. But And then the plexiglass, there were several ways you could mount this to the side of your case. You could use glue, which probably isn't the most favorite. And then you can do double-sided tape, or you can actually also use screws, and you can just screw holes. And since this case didn't have any type of a screw theme, although I guess I can see a few here now with the light from the camera, it didn't really have any nuts and bolts on the case. If that was more of a theme, I might have done that. But I just simply used a double-sided tape and put it pretty much on this side, the top, and the bottom. The side over here, when I first mounted it, I didn't think about it. Anybody that's looking to do this case specifically, there's a lip about right here, if you can see that, where the panel that closes it actually sits right where this edge is. So putting the plexiglass leaked over there really prevented it from closing. So I had to cut the plexiglass after having already mounted it, which was a pain, right to the edge of the U-channel. And even then, it's still right on the edge. So I had to try and shave down the inside here with my Dremel tool, and I still should do probably a little bit more. I just got tired of doing it because it was a lengthy job. So it's not quite all the way closed, but I plan on fixing that, repairing it. But overall, I am quite happy. It's pretty cool. I was able to modify my case. So first time I've ever attempted that. A lot of fun. It is a little nerve-wracking though, because you really don't want to mess it all up. But the worst that could happen is you buy another case, I guess. And I also just got to get some touch-up paint for here. I kind of didn't tape the whole thing down with the painter's tape when I did it. I'd say to anybody doing this, it's probably just a good idea. Just go ahead and cover the whole thing in painter's tape, because the back end of the jigsaw is a little bit longer than I figured, and even though I didn't cut the metal, it vibrated and chipped the top of it. But other than that, that's really the only major huge mistake I made, which was very much a relief when it was all done. So anyways, if you guys have any questions about that, I'll try to answer it for you. But that was my first one, so hats off. So then I'll just kind of look in the window here and show you guys what's inside. You can see the motherboard I'm using is different than the other. This is the AM3 Plus Micro ATX. I believe it's the M587, something like MXL Plus. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But anyway, it's probably like a $60 motherboard. Not super awesome, not super expensive, has some minor features. The one thing I think out of this system that I miss the most is some I/O connectivity. I've only got 4 USB ports in the back, and I have the 2 USB ports in the front, so it's really missing USB 3, sad face, and then some other small connectivity. But since it's only for gaming and mostly those kinds of things, it's not a super huge deal at the moment. I was able to keep a few things. I'll kind of cover those first. I was able to keep my H80 air cooler, or water cooler, which I was super excited in a way. The case I used for the to put the other system in for work was not capable of mounting the H80. So in one way I was able to keep that. I was also able to keep 2 hard drives, my solid state 128 gig ADATA, and I use that as my boot drive now instead of my gaming drive. And then I also use a 500 gig Seagate, which is mounted in here for my games and music and movies and all that stuff. I did upgrade, let's see. I also kept my Asus sound card, which was in my other system, because they did not need that, so it still does a great job playing audio for anybody that likes to listen to audio and music. Mostly mine's a hi-fi setup, so it's just stereo, it's not anything super fancy. And then I pretty much was able to keep the power supply. So the power supply in there is still my 750 watt Corsair. Since it's not modular, and I took very much meticulously placed the wires and cables all in the back, I didn't really feel like undoing all of those just to replant the system, so I got them another power supply. So for pretty much all the things I was able to keep, that's pretty much it. The motherboard is from the other system, the CPU is from the other system, memory is from the other system, and also the video card is brand new. So I got the GTX 660 video card, the Superclocked edition. This is a pretty cool card. I think I did go ahead and get it from Best Buy because it was only $15 more expensive than the Newegg version, so I went ahead and just did it then because I needed something at the moment, so it was kind of nice. The memory is DDR3 1600 MHz ADATA, which is 8 gigabytes worth, and does a pretty good job. Not anything super fancy, but does well for the CPU. And the CPU is an AMD Phenom II X4 965, so the CPU is a little bit older than the AMD FX series, but I believe the CPU is still, I think on Newegg, about $95. Tom'sHardware.com rates it as probably the best CPU for the money, under $100 for gaming, and it does a pretty good job, really. I have not noticed a huge dip, or even really a small dip in frame rates compared to my other system, which was the AMD FX 8350 using a GTX 560. So games seem to do probably a little bit better in some cases, playing at 1920 by 1080. So really, the system doesn't seem to be old yet. So I plan on doing a couple improvements with it probably in the next couple months to help expand its life just a little bit. But overall, this system, so far as playing games, didn't really change too much. Of course, I don't play too many games, but from my previous system, it seems to do quite well with games. So, and of course, being able to use this same water cooler for the 965, this thing stays so cool compared to my 8350. I have the Asus probe over here, and you can see right now the temperatures are quite cool, 36 degrees Celsius, but it never gets over 49 degrees when I'm playing a game or doing something like a handbrake rip or something like that. I mean, it just totally ice cold. So, which the Phenoms normally in their series tend to run a lot better when they are cold. Because this is a cheaper motherboard, I have it overclocked currently right now at 4 gigahertz, which really does a great job. Probably why I haven't noticed much of a drop in frame rates, because it's clocked so high from 3.4 at its normal clock rate. The memory, however, is a little strange. I think it's because of the motherboard. When I set the memory voltage to auto, the motherboard clocks the memory at 8 volts, which is like 0.2 volts higher than it's supposed to be. But it runs perfectly stable. I've run lots of test benchmarks with the memory, and I tell you, this is pretty impressive. I'm not sure why the motherboard feels it needs to do that, because I've run this memory in another system before and it did not run that high. So whether or not it's actually running it at 1.8 or 1.9, whatever it is, instead of its default 1.65, I don't know, or if it's just telling me that and it's actually running at its normal speed, whatever the reason. But I have it overclocked to 4 gigahertz, and the HT link is at 2.2, and the memory Northbridge is clocked at 2.6. So for a Phenom system, that's not too bad, and the timings are 99924 and then 41T. So overall, does pretty well. And of course the GTX 660. The one thing I will say about this card, and I am a big EVGA fan, I've owned several of their cards now, and the one thing I will say if anyone's interested in getting this card is that this is the SC edition, so the super clock. It's not the FTW version. Its default clock is 1059. It does not really overclock too much from its default clocks. So whether or not I just got a bug version or whatnot, I mean, it does well stock. I'm not trying to diminish its performance as is, but in terms of being able to overclock it a little bit more, I think I was able to push it like 30 megahertz on the CPU core, or GPU core, excuse me, and then another 25 megahertz on the memory. Of course, the memory is already at like a 6 gigahertz point, so it's pretty fast already, and the card does perform well in most everything. I mean, I don't think I've played a game yet that it's not been able to play at high or ultra high. Things like Modern Warfare 3 or Crisis 2, stuff like that. So, but anyways, anybody interested in that just can take note about the 660 non-TI version, 2 gigabyte card there. So, lastly, I just wanted to mention that I will be trying to upgrade the system just a little bit in the next couple months, probably just to help the lifespan or the longevity of the computer. And the two things I'll be looking to upgrade are the motherboard I'm looking to do an Asus Sabertooth motherboard, the 990FX, just to be able to give me some more enhanced features, I think, and some better I/O connectivity, just broad that range, because I think that'll benefit me more with the system rather than, say, a new CPU, because this motherboard does support it is an AM3 Plus socket, so it does support the new AMD FX series processors. But I think in my situation, I'd prefer to have a better motherboard with more features for me. And then, of course, that motherboard will still support AMD FX if I really decide I want one of those in the future. But and also, I plan on upgrading the graphics by getting a second GTX 660 superclocked instead of maybe purchasing a new graphics card that's more powerful. So instead of selling the whole card and getting a new one. And I've actually heard quite good things about the GTX 660s in SLI mode. I've heard they perform very, very well, better than a 680. So I think that's kind of exciting. And it's a little bit of a cheaper upgrade in that sense. And I've never run SLI before. I've always done Crossfire if I've ever used dual graphics, so that's kind of going to be a new experience for me, as well as never owning an Asus Sabertooth motherboard either. So I kind of look forward to doing a review with both of those. And I think for myself that would probably be a little bit better of an enhancement than maybe, say, a new CPU and a graphics card. So if you guys have any thoughts or comments on that, you can give those to me or post those, and I'll see what we can do. I also, lastly, I did also get a motherboard, no, excuse me, not a motherboard, a new keyboard for Christmas. Since the last time I made the video, I asked for this one specifically because of the price. And it's not a mechanical keyboard, but it is a Logitech G110, and it is able to match the colors of my Razer Naga mouse, which I love. And I don't really use the G keys quite so much, although the keys are there if you guys want to use those for maybe MMOs or certain games. But I just particularly love the build quality of the keyboard, and I wanted it to be backlit, so that's really the reason why I got this keyboard, or asked for it, I should say. And it does have some neat media functions on it, as well as a Windows key lock and a button to turn on and off the lights right here, so you can turn the lights on and off. So it's kind of nice, and you can set presets in the software if you play certain games and you're into that and you want to do certain keys for certain games specifically, and you can set those profiles up in the system. So if you guys have any questions or comments about that too, I'll try to answer those.